Hello everyone, it's me Varus, and in this video I'll be giving you a big overview on the upcoming new year, the weather going into it, and the weather of recent and some analysis from the past couple of days. So if you do enjoy this video, please consider subscribing, liking, and sharing with friends. And let's get right into it. So it's been a really long time. Last week, no excuses, I just did not honestly have much time to post. I had lots of cousins over and they're coming back tomorrow, but I will be able to post every day starting today. And honestly, the weather hasn't been as interesting. I mean, there was some atmospheric rivers going on in the southwestern US, and there could be another one on the way. I'll talk about that. Northeast did experience a little bit of a snowstorm, but it was a big bust. I'll kind of go back in a couple model runs if I can at the end of the video. But this video is more about what's to come, and it's because the pattern has been looking constantly more impressive, especially for eastern US in terms of any winter weather. And in the west also certainly remains active, as there's another atmospheric river I'm tracking. So we'll talk about all of that. So right now, I just have IR pulled up for today just to highlight some of the features. I think I'm going to start doing this more often with my videos. So we do have this very strong upper level low over here in the northeast, kind of sneaking in eastern Canada. Here, I'll kind of just use pink right here. Very dynamic storm. I mean, had some blizzard conditions on the backside and winter storm conditions on the backside, whilst we had some more warmer rains and wetter conditions on the eastern side. Now I will say there was some ice actually embedded within, and honestly got pretty far south because we just had this impressive Arctic high in the Canadian high that's constantly been pumping down colder air and causing cold air damming. So we had icing issues as far south as the northern suburbs of Philadelphia. So it was some pretty interesting concerns, especially once you got into like New England. That's where you had some major icing. Some ice storm warnings are actually posted up. But this low does start to exit, and it's a big factor for our upcoming winter weather pattern for the prospects in the northeast and overall eastern US. I'll talk about that in a bit. So that will depart. Nothing much honestly really going on elsewhere. Here's your cold front with that storm kind of moving offshore now. It's bringing behind it some very Arctic cold air, so just keep that in mind. We do have a little low pressure system kind of spinning, does look pretty dynamic off the southwest coast, bringing some clouds trying to inch into Baja California and eventually into California, Southern California, California Sur, all experiencing these clouds. Kind of the trail honestly leads through the southern US and almost into this cold front, so it does look pretty impressive. This may be this is kind of bringing those clouds and might be bringing some showers. I'll kind of show that later on. This could be one of the leading factors into our next atmospheric river, so I'll show you guys that. But besides those two major systems, relatively quiet. So here's our surface analysis. So kind of the main big factor is really all there is to talk about is this low pressure. You can kind of zoom in here. There's your low. You can tell it's very dynamic just by these packed isobars. You can see how like tight these lines are. These brown lines just tell you that it's been very windy as well. I'll tell you that much. It's been very windy through all of these areas. It's gonna stay windy as this cold front makes its way through and this Arctic boundary settles in. Again, here's your cold front just starting to reach offshore. Hasn't really reached Boston yet as of latest. I think this is the latest map. Yeah, but that does expect overnight tonight you will start to get those cooler temperatures, but it is definitely pretty impressive. I mean, you can take a look at these temperatures, this contrast off the Outer Banks, the OBX of North Carolina, 71, go a little more 59, so kind of an interesting contrast. You can kind of go 46 to 71. It's not dropping rapidly, but it's a steady drop, and it's going to drop pretty deeply, so that's something to watch out for. And there's your low right there. So yeah, but I will say over here it still is cold honestly in front, because you see this high up here constantly pumping down colder air. Cold air damming is what you call it. This isn't getting obviously as far south, but it's pumping cold air into like Maine, arguably even New Hampshire, maybe Vermont. and so it's kind of keeping it colder there, and that's why we've honestly had this consistent wintry weather going on in, I'd say, like these areas. Honestly, hasn't really switched to rain. I'd say more interior though, kind of including the coast here, more like in here. But yeah, that's basically it for surface analysis. Talking about alerts and indices, you can see how it is active in the Northeast. So you do have some dense fog advisories over here in the Pacific Northwest. You do actually have some winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings out here in New Mexico and Texas. I'll talk about that in a bit. And then some special weather statements over here, likely concerning the cold temperatures, and actually I don't know what they're actually concerning. Let's see. Oh, fire danger is pretty dry down there. You can see these wind advisories too, so I'd figure that could be why. And then over here in North Dakota, some special weather statements. Likely looks to be some freezing rain. It looks like could be an issue. Period of light mix and wintry precipitation, so something to watch. But main story again over here in the Northeast, winter storm warnings, advisories. All these are some lake effect snow warnings, all with or snow squall warnings, all because of that very, very dynamic system. And all this kind of in this beige color is all wind advisories. Here are some red flag warnings, and here are some wind advisories as well, and some frost and freeze advisories getting into possibly areas of Florida. I mean, that's pretty interesting. You can see Orlando almost near, freeze watches surrounding outside. We can go to like Leesburg. Okay, you can see 33. Maybe Orlando gets included later. We'll have to see. At least frost advisories could be possible, but does look to get really cold with this cold front coming through. So let's kind of go to the east. But before that, I will quickly zoom down into the south central U.S. to kind of address that winter storm threat, that winter weather that we could be getting over here in kind of Texas region. So it's kind of been ongoing, honestly. There you have it. We'll go back a couple runs. So this is honestly kind of in the past, so my fault. But it's not anything too impressive. I mean, there you had it. Right here you have some snow kind of breaking out through Texas, southern New Mexico. And I'm just kind of highlighting it because it's not the most abnormal, but it is a little interesting to see that kind of going on. And then you get another system. But this is all it is, really. Just this kind of low pressure, I'd say. Honestly, trailing maybe off that storm, kind of causing an area of low pressure in this area. So pretty interesting stuff. But now, let's get back to what I was going to talk about. So, this is your dynamic storm, okay? If we do look at the surface map, you have a bunch of snow squalls, lake effect snow. That moves out. Something to watch for kind of like the I-95 corridor peeps and winter weather lovers, I guess. Especially towards, I'd say, north of Philly. Let me get back to the Vort map. So this kind of swings out. You do get a little low here. That probably won't cause much of anything. But this is something interesting to watch. This comes in late. This is New Year's Eve. It starts to drop through. You have this upper level trough. Okay, that kind of swings through. Now, if you had this kind of swinging through the Dakotas, Minnesota, this could be honestly a pretty big event. I mean, it would be at least a moderate event for portions of the Mid-Atlantic and possibly even Northeast, especially on 95. But it is, the axis is here is positively tilted and it's dropping down kind of much more east, so it's kind of harder to get this trough to swing around to a negative tilt. But it does come down, and you do see it does kind of go a little neutral at this time, 6 a.m. So this is kind of getting into the morning of New Year's. Here's your trough axis, still slightly positively tilted, but you have this Vort max. I mean, it's right here, kind of several little short pieces of energy coming along this trough. And so this is pretty interesting, as you could get some light snow flurries and maybe even heavier pockets of snow. I'd say generally in this area. Usually it's north of the thing. So DC, maybe some flurries. Baltimore, I'd say Philly and north is where we really kind of get into. If I really had to highlight a zone, I'd probably still say through here. I'd say DC and stuff could definitely get some. DC and areas around could get some flurries and stuff. But you see, it goes negative once it gets offshore. You'd want that negative tilt further back here so you could get energy to swing up, cause some sort of prolonged snow band along the 95. But it does go negative, but a little too late. Does kind of try to get neutral though. 8 a.m. It's moving very fast, but just to see how that looks like on the surface, I'm just saying it does look more impressive on the 500 map. On the surface, it doesn't look as much, but this is the type of thing where it could always be more on radar, okay? And so a lot of the mountains, so it's kind of a clipper. You see it come through right here. The mountains do absorb a lot of the energy, but you try to get this coastal redevelopment, and that's where it could get more interesting, especially New York City, Boston. I mean, if you had this trough getting a little more negative, a little more quicker, you could probably get it further down, extended towards Baltimore, DC, Philly, but you probably could still get likely some flurries, okay, because it's, again, very strong Vort Max. But you get this kind of low, you'll start to see that low pop off because you get some coastal redevelopments once this trough goes negative or starts to, get neutral in the negative. You don't even need a negative tilt. A neutral tilt could still get some coastal redevelopment, but just happens too late for, I'd say, DC, Philly, again, some flurries. More New York City, you can see snow kind of breaks out overnight period through the break of dawn, so maybe some dustings, so it'll be relatively cold. Boston probably maybe with a higher chance, but you see that low start to pop off. I'd say eastern Long Island, Nantucket, Cape Cod is where you could get some heavier snows. I mean, you see it become a bigger dynamic storm into Nova Scotia. So if only that was tilted earlier, everything was shifted a little more west. Well, we can still watch those trends, but that's where you could get something more interesting. But just a little New Year's stuff to watch out for. Now we'll get into the meat and potatoes of this pattern. So this is the 500 millibar geopotential height and anomaly, showing all the heights, ridges, troughs, high pressure, low pressure. Here is your dynamic storm. I'm going to use it probably in pink, or we'll use yellow. Right here is your dynamic storm, okay? This retrogrades north and east. You kind of see it kind of retrograde. But what does it do is, what it actually does is guides this other kind of low pressure. So here's your low over here. It guides this other one. This is your New Year's Eve piece dropping down. This is what it does. It establishes a negative EPO, positive PNA. You can see that through here, okay? What you have is this ridge spiking up through here. I don't know why I'm on GFS. We'll go to EPS, okay? So you have this positive PNA, okay? You have this ridge spiking, okay? Not quite into Alaska, but it's a pretty tall ridge. And you have this low over here. And so with this ridge spiking, low right here, you have a Gulf of Alaska low here, obviously negative NAO over here, some sort of 50-50 low over here. So honestly, this just shows that this would be probably pretty favorable pattern for winter weather. Obviously, this New Year's piece isn't positioned right to really cause anything until it gets into Nova Scotia. But what you have is this cutter. Many people, honestly, for at least me in Northeast, would wish it was snow. But what it does do establishes the cold pattern, okay? You got this trough in the east, ridge in the west, classic positive PNA, negative EPO pattern because of the ridging near Alaska. So you have that trough that settles in come New Year's. Now, something you do see is you kind of see, for winter weather lovers, you still have your negative NAO up here. Okay, you kind of have some sort of 50-50 low over here, kind of positioned way to east. You do still have kind of some sort of negative EPO signal showing up, still very kind of cloudy. But what you do have is this trough. Okay, you have this trough in Alaska, which forces this ridge further east. And so whatever pieces kind of come down and you're trying to get coastal redevelopment, typically is too far off coast. You'd want this ridge. You'd want basically everything a little more west, except for this negative EPO, negative NAO. 50 low, you'd also want further west if you would want some sort of storm. But watch as we kind of get through the first week, I'd say, of the New Year's, okay? You still have your negative EPO. This shifts a little more east underneath this trough. Negative NAO is west base, which is good. 50-50 low kind of gets out of reach, but you still have a relatively good signal of some sort of low pressures in this area. Okay, obviously it looks further off the coast at first, so you kind of want to reel that back west, but look what you get. Okay, this is January 6th. This is when our first, I'd say, storm signal kind of shows up. Why? First, you have your negative EPO right here, negative NAO over here, 50-50 low, not really there. So that's something you gotta watch out for. You do still have some sort of ridge, except it's not spiking as much. Gulf of Alaska low, too far north. You'd want this further down here. But you see this kind of area right here. This all shows lower pressures along the coast. Okay, it's just, I'm talking, you'd want this EPO a little more east, probably tugged. You'd want this trough in Alaska to be a ridge. You'd want this ridge, basically, to build into that. You want this ridge to spike into Alaska, which would cause downstream amplification of that low pressure off the coast. Because if you had this look, you'd still get some sort of low, possibly, but it wouldn't be as amplified as you can possibly get it. Some sort of blockbuster, if you know what I mean. So, that's why I'd say January 7th, January 8th, this could still be some moderate, if not significant, event through here, but it's something to watch. Now, you do see these isobars, okay? You kind of see how it's kind of rounds up through here. Even though it doesn't show it on the 500 millibar map, that could be signal that you have some sort of ridging trying to come here before this trough over here. So it's something to watch. This negative NAO, honestly, are saving grace right now, causing this cooler. This is honestly a classic negative NAO pattern, and so you could still get some moderate storms with this. I mean, it persists. I mean, you could get a little bit of moderation reloading, but then it gets even more favorable. Okay, this is, I honestly do think second half of January is when it gets better. Okay, because this is why. Negative NAO, west base, perfect. Gulf of Alaska low is technically over here, but honestly, I'd prefer to have it here than up here. You have the biggest wild card is you have that ridge spiking well into Alaska through here, which is pretty good. You could have some sort of 50-50 low over here, and then negative VPO kind of right here. And so what you have, and then you don't see it on here just because of low confidence, but you have some sort of troughing here. And so if you did get a low pressure from northern stream to come here, you start to get an active southern stream. Is also some signs you could get some combinations of kaboom, you get a storm. So what does that look like on the GFS? Because GFS just had a pretty monster run, I'd say. Happy hour run is what people would call it. So let's see kind of through the Vort and Wit, or we'll kind of show it through 500 heights. I think is a better kind of look. We'll still do North America. So let's go all the way back. This is January. It shows up January 6th, 7th through 8th. There it is. Okay. So this is what you have. Okay. You have your negative NAO, west based. Okay. You have some sort of 50-50 low, I guess, trying to set up. Okay. It's trying. Some sort of Gulf of Alaska low through here. Little ridging here. Little ridging here. But here's your low from the north branch. Okay. And you watch how it dives down. Okay, watch how it starts to dive down. Boom. Right there. You have your low right there. What do you have? So you have your low right here. Some sort of 50-50 low here. Negative NAO. Okay, I'm going to keep naming these pieces. West base. You do have a ridge spiking into Alaska, even though it's not the best. Like, you technically want this ridge to also extend into the western U.S., but you do have a ridge spiking in Alaska, some ridging here, which overall, both pieces kind of cause some amplification, some sort of Gulf of Alaska low, possibly through here. Negative EPO. And, I mean, there you have your storm, okay? It pops off. It's able to round the bend because of that negative NAO. And there you have it. Look how it kind of swings up. Instead of just going out to sea like that, and maybe causing 3 to 5, 4 to 6 event, this becomes coastal, becomes what we haven't seen in a long time. Miller A nor'easter rounds up, and you can get a 1 to 2 foot event along the coast. Not saying that's going to happen, but that's kind of what you would see off of a pattern. If you look at it on the map itself, here you have it. Okay, so you have that energy, boom. Okay, you have cold air, first of all, entrenched, okay? Southern stream energy right here. Let's kind of show where the cold air is entrenched. So you have your cold air down almost to North Carolina. I think for you folks in the Southeast would have to wait a little longer to see that colder air kind of seep further south if you want a storm threat, but bears watching. South stream, North stream energy. Watch how it comes together, okay? Boom, it comes together really quickly too, because you have that ridge through here, at least this local ridge that's starting to amplify the storm. high pressure in control, able to provide sufficient Arctic air down through portions of 95, DC, Richmond even, possibly, for at least some sort of wintry weather. Okay, and there you have it. I mean, you have a low. It does look like it's cutting. So this is actually kind of technically a Miller B storm, because you have this low right here, and you start to see a coastal transfer occur. So you have your low kind of cutting through the Appalachian, but then you get the low to transfer. So this would be a classic Miller B most likely. But this is what you have. You have that low transfer. You start to get implication. I mean, you have snow from basically Boston, New York City, Philly, DC, or Philly, Baltimore, DC. Okay, Richmond's rain just because warmer air. But don't take. I'm not trying to go specifics, but I'm just showing how a big storm would play out. Not saying this is not a forecast, but it bears watching. Okay, so you have that low starts to redevelop. Okay, it's not a slam dunk, but it does provide a pretty healthy storm for all on the eastern coast, especially 95. But yeah, so that's one period I'd say to watch. Okay, no output hasn't been out yet. Euro AI kind of showing us a similar thing. Okay, this is we'll go all the way out to the 8th. So 18Z. Okay, look. So 18Z. This time everything is a little too east. Okay, this is kind of how I was hinting at. If everything's too east, you get that low to develop, but it's well offshore, and you don't really get stuff. Typically, we see this northwest trend. Usually, everyone knows about the northwest trend. And this is honestly more of a Miller A compared to the GFS's Miller B. So there's still lots to sort out. You have that colder air wraps in. Cape Cod could get something substantial into eastern Canada, but that's all offshore. Now, back to 12Z. You have it all shifted west. And here you have a very substantial storm kind of bombing out on the eastern U.S., causing probably some widespread totals. So, it's that close, okay? That close. Euro, similar thing with the 12Z. Kind of reflects the 18Z. You have that low, comes down, mainly North Stream, but then you do see some sort of short Southern Stream energy come up, but it's a little too west, okay? You do get more of a formidable storm, northern New England, Maine, but it's also kind of, it's too far east, I'd say. And first of all, even if it was over here, just based off the Euro, it'd cut up. It'd probably cut, believe it or not, something like that, okay, which would be maybe something like that, which would be pretty interesting. It would be pretty weird, but I'm just showing there's storm signals there. You can't take everything to face value, but there's storm signal there. Okay, Euro, GFS, EP, all the ensemble, CMC. We'll show the CMC real quick. This kind of goes out full, but there you have it. Miller A tries to take place. Okay, so it bears watching. Okay, bears watching for sure. Icon, we can just do it for fun. Don't think it goes far enough out. It doesn't go far enough out. You do see this North Stream energy, but you don't really see any Southern Stream, so that's another possibility. So lots to watch out for. Okay, but it's an interesting time period. One of the best patterns I've seen in a while, at least so far this winter. Now going out into the west, talking about that atmospheric reverse. Saw that low over here on satellite loop spinning off Baja California Sur's coast. It starts to retrograde north and almost due north, and so it starts to deepen a little bit too. Widespread rains return. Okay, and this time it's warm. For even the California mountains, you honestly get rain. Could pose mudslide and flooding concerns even more than last time. You do still get some snow at the highest of elevations, but at least starts out as rain as you get some warmer air. Honestly, mostly rain. Okay, at least with the GF or Euro. I don't know how the GFS probably depicts it. Same thing. Okay, so it's honestly really warm. I mean, if we were just to take a little picture, I mean, look at that. That would be melting flakes most likely. It'd still be close. Obviously, you could probably still get some snow at the highest of elevations, like if you take a sounding right there. But it does look a little warm, honestly. It looks pretty marginal. So that low kind of retrogrades through. I don't think this is going to be as significant as what we have had for at least like Los Angeles, the city's lower elevations, but high elevations could experience impacts with it being a little warmer and less mountainous snows. But this is also pretty fast moving. It's not really hanging on the coast. So this comes in New Year's Eve, lasts through New Year's Day. And then you start to get January 2nd, you get another low. This one's further north, so Pacific Northwest low. Still brings a little cold front that is able to introduce some cooler temperatures, maybe some more heavier mountain stones with the highest elevations. And then you get another one. This is getting far out, but this kind of beeline straight north. But overall, and then maybe some quieter periods. But overall, at least through the next week, I'd say it looks pretty active for the Pacific Northwest. I'd say Pacific Northwest and down here, I'd say honestly all these areas. Okay, with hot spots being, if I had to draw it, kind of get a little artistic with the green, I'd say hot spots through here, Washington, Oregon, maybe excluding the far eastern portions, and then I'd say from like south of San Francisco through northern portions of Baja California serves, where you gotta watch out for some rains. And I mean into northern California, like Eugene, all these areas, honestly, all these areas. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. That's about it. Pretty long video, but just wanted to get everything out. Been a really long time, and it's gonna get active, so I'll be on cue from now on. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.